How's it, guys? Thank you for joining us. This is a continuation of Mic Week. Those who watched us last week, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Those who watched the education that I got last night on the mic show, thank you for that. We've got Mr. Marlon Green with us again today.
Yeah.
We got some good feedback from last week's little session. We're going to do this similar stuff today. I'm just going to explain through our technical setup today a little bit. We've got, again, as many cameras as we could get our hands on. So we've got the camera we're talking into. We've got a camera showing you the middle path on Marlon's head there. We've got a camera over there that he can speak into. We've got a camera behind him that shows you a couple of mic allocations on some of the toms. You'll see we've got some extra mics on there. Got a microphone over here so you can see what I'm doing. We've even got our screens of the console coming through as sources, so you can see my sign screen, you can see my middle screen. So as I'm pressing buttons there, you'll see it in there. We can even see Pro Tools. And I think that's all of them. So, and then microphone-wise, I'm going to start with that so we see where we are. So last week we had the 230s on the toms, which we still got, 91 inside, 902 on the outside. We've added the sub kick. I had some couple of questions about that. I spoke about sub on kick, and a lot of people thought it was just a different EQ on the out kick, which you can do, but the sub kick is an actual microphone. Looks like a little drum, works well. We've got overhead, we still got the Neumann TL103s. I've added the SM81s on a little T bracket, so my stands on an odd position just to get the mics in a similar position. C1000 with the 5K scoop on the high end on the hi-hats. We've got a ND421 on the second snare. We have I5 on the top snare with a SM81 with a 10 dB pad, no filter. On the bottom snare, we've got a 57 and a 450, ATM 450. Then what I've added on tom 3 is a 450. What I've added on tom 4 is a 350 with a standard little gooseneck clip and a 57. And then AKG 519 additional to the 5th tom. And what we'll do is we'll do some exercises, and I've got no EQs on them or anything. The only place I've EQ'd, and you can see it if you look at this screen here, there's a little bit of that on the inside kick mic. And then I've done, on the 902, I've just done a high and a low pass filter. And I've put gates on both of them, just to illustrate how that works. Sub kick is pretty flat at this moment. Snare top, flat. Snare top 2, which is 81 with a filter on. Snare bottom, 57. Snare bottom, 450, flat. I'll put some filters on there. I was just playing just now. The 421 hi-hats. Hi-hat, I've done a bit of an EQ just to add a little bit of sibilance. I was getting bored. And then the 5 230s on the toms. And then on the extra mics on the toms as well, as I'm scrolling through them here, you can see they're all flat. So we don't have like the world's best tuned drum sound. We've cleaned it up a little bit. That's why I put some gates on some of the elements, just to clean it up. So we've got something to listen to. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Marlon to give us a... Oh, you haven't said hello yet. This is the best part of the show, is Marlon's greetings.
What's up, guys? How you doing? Back at Sound G family. They tease me because I'm short. That is fine. I still love them. We're back here to make some good music and to learn. Awesome. Turn your system up loud so you can hear what's happening and enjoy it. Let's make it happen.
So obviously, like last time, I'm going to turn our lapel mics off so that you don't hear this massive noise. I've got the VCA set up on my console, one for our talking mics and one for the drum kit. I'm starting out with the standard tom mics with the 81 and the 57 on the snare top and bottom. I'm going to leave the sub kick out for now, so 2 kick mics, and the second snare has just got the 1 mic on. And then he's got some loops that he's going to play with. So when you don't get hit by copyright on the playlist, we'll try and avoid that. We got a little bit of that last week. But it's all part of the game, we learn. And then I got a couple of mics on the chair here. I don't know if you can see them anyway. I'll pick them up and I'll talk through them just to explain some stuff. You give a couple of do's and don'ts and tips and tricks. For now, we're going to ask Marlon to bless us with an anointed track.
It's that time.
It's that time. There we go.
All right.
we go. So if you were listening properly there, you would have heard. Listen properly. You would have heard. Sorry. Quite a little bit of ambience. I lifted the gates on the toms just to silent the snare and kick a little bit. I still didn't EQ them. The overheads with the TL103s are still completely flat. If you can see my channel strip there, no, I don't even have a high pass filter on them. What we'll do just now as well, Marlon's going to do a couple of exercises for us to give us some nice examples of stuff on toms, overheads, snares, just like, 8 bars on 16/9 triplets. And then his eyes just opened up.
Really?
Yeah. But just to give you an idea, so that was a completely flat kit. You heard I've actually I've got a bit of snare reverb and tom reverb going there. I went for Phil Collins Tom's Tom Verb, which you can see I'm using a studio reverb, which is a standard plugin on the Avid console. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you, I'm using an Avid S6L this week. So I've got standard deverb on the snare and a deverb on the toms, on the overheads, and then a studio reverb on the toms, which is a rich hall, just at 0.6, a little bit of pre-delay just to lengthen it out a bit with a full mix. The overheads, no pre-delay, just nice and lushy. And then, and I actually did an EQ on that. If you can see it on the screen now, I've done a little bit of got rid of a little bit of the mids and scooped the tops just to get a bit of sizzle on the cymbals. And then again, my snare reverb, 1.2, no pre-delay. So I pulled that down a bit so we can get some clean sound. What I want to get to now is just quickly, I just want to get him just to play the toms. I'll pull my talking mics down a little bit, just so we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the toms, maybe in 2 rounds.
Okay. All right, so.
So if you guys heard that, I mean, as a starting point, and we spoke about it a lot last night, the quality of your source. Mr. Gorksy has given us some nice new coated ambassador skins. So we got, last week, you remember, we had a couple of mismatches. So we tuned them, no smiley faces, and flat EQs, as you guys could see. There's no EQs other than a high-pass filter just to get a bit of the low-end rumble from the kick away. And obviously you listen to them now with a slight gate on them, but with the overheads in play and stuff like that. So what I can do now, I'm going to mute overheads and any other potential bleed sources like hi-hats. So we just have the 5 tom mics. Just do the same thing for us again. Sorry, I forgot to turn the mics off there for a second. That's why that's why I've got the lapels on a different thing there. So I'm going to ask him to do the same thing, and all I'm going to do is bring in the overheads on the second time round. Cool. So just a quick one. You can already hear how much life comes into the kit just by bringing in the overheads. I've got all the effects off at the moment. I'm going to do the opposite now. I'm going to kill the tom mics, and we're just going to have a listen to the overhead. So we've got the 2 Neumann TL103s on overhead, and just with those open, do the same tom roll. So if you were listening nicely there, if you were listening in stereo on headphones or on speakers, you would even heard a nice little image going from the left to the right there. Nice. They're obviously softer because we're not so close. I mean, I could push that up. I've just brought the fader to 0, which is where it would be if he plays the cymbals. But with no filter, the microphones being large diaphragm actually pick up a nice body of all the toms. And you hear that's the sound that we add to the dry mics, which gives us a nice feel on the tom. So, and when I work, obviously, this is where being solo-minded can catch you. If you on headphones or in studio or whatever, and you treat every instrument by itself, and then just push up faders, you're going to end up doing it all again. You've got to do everything in context. So my point of EQ if I wanted to start EQing, I would obviously, first of all, figure out what's bothering me, go to the source, see if I can fix it with a mic placement or something like that, or tuning. If my image is not right, placement of overheads, things like that. And then last resort is a bit of filters to clean up. And it's literally to clean up, because obviously we've got a really good source going already. I mean, this Pillmasters kit sounds amazing. I think it's the color, it's the purple. And it's not about, I'm not out to not EQ. Obviously, if and when I EQ, I want to do it for creative reasons. You know, if I want to get a certain R&B type tom sound, or, you know, a bit more dollar sound, depending on the genre that's being played, I don't want to do that against an EQ that I've done to fix a problem on toms. So in this case, we've got nicely tuned toms with similar age skins, which means the tones carries across nicely. You can hear a bit of discrepancy between 4 and 5. Needs a bit of work. The 4 skin is brand new, so it'll settle in while we're playing. But the idea is I've got a point of source that now I can take and I can adapt it to whatever's happening from a song perspective. And that can take a bit of time, or it can be quick. It can just be a quick either low-pass filters or a bit of mid-range work or something like that. If I wanted more attack on all of these toms, and that's the only thing I wanted, I could simply just move the mic position down a little bit closer, and I would get more attack because I would come closer to the skin. We mentioned that last week. If you notice where you can probably see on that camera, the distance that these 230s are, it's about 3 fingers, which is far enough off the tom so I get a nice warm resonance. If I start going in with the mic, I'm getting closer to the percussive skin, which means I'm probably going to drop my gain slightly, which means I'll start losing a bit of the resonance, and I get a lot more percussive slap, and vice versa. Now, in a live scenario, you know, the tom sounds amazing at a half meter away, but I can't get a mic there because of all the other stuff happening. So we got to find a microphone that gives me what I want. I think at this point, what I'm going to do is, while I'm talking about that, I'm going to switch between the dynamic of the 230 and the 450 on tom 3 only. Let me just get that ready. So I'm going to start with tom 3 just by itself. I'm just going to ask you to give me about 4 or 5 hits. Sorry, do that again. Okay, this is where counting. See, sound guys count to 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now I'm working on 3. I made the mistake of going to 4, and no one tells me. So I'm going to 3 now, which is 1, 2, 3. Let's do that again. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the 450, which is the little pencil condenser you can see there, which has got a side address pencil. So I'm going to switch over, same tom. Okay, I'm going to switch now while he's playing. Give me about 8 beats. I'm going to switch 4 from the one, 4 from the other one. Sorry. I'm going to pull Marlon's mic down while he's playing. I'll put you up when you talk, I promise. So there you could hear, just between that, with the dynamic and the condenser, high end comes in, massive, more percussive sound. The trick, though, is I'm going to ask you to give me a little bit of cymbal work around this tom. You don't necessarily have to play the tom, just a bit. You can even just do a groove, kick, snare, hats, and cymbals. And I'm just going to listen to those specific microphones. I'm going to start with a dynamic mic. Now I'm going to switch to the 450, and he's going to do exactly the same thing because he's a professional. So what I did at the end there, when you heard the bit of fading, I was going between dynamic and condenser. And you could hear with the condenser, this crash and ride was quite prominent. So you would tend to want to gate more. Or in this case, you can also see that it's quite far off. I could go closer. If I go closer, I can drop the gain slightly. It gets a little bit less pronounced. But then I started to compromise. So that microphone I know sounds amazing on a tom when it's about 3 fingers off of the tom. It's a little bit higher than that now. It's close to about 3.5. I can go a little bit down, but you can hear that already between dynamic and condenser. The characteristic of a condenser is exaggerated in this scenario now underneath cymbals. So tom 5 is even more so, and we'll play with that just now. But it just again it goes to show you, it doesn't mean a condenser won't work. It's just things to consider. I think I picked on Ligon last week when I spoke about him. His ride position is about 0.3 microns above second tom normally. Actually, sometimes he doesn't play with it, but what it is there is very low. It's almost nowhere to put a mic. So a mic that, in that position, I would almost completely stay away from a condenser so I can get a dynamic in and try and find a spot where it can be as isolated as possible. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to snare. I'm going to ask him to do a couple of snare rolls for us.
Which one?
First snare, we're going to start with the combination of the I5 and the 57 on the bottom, which is what we had last week. So for now, I'm going to leave the gate in on the bottom snare. Or actually, let me just start with one mic. I'm going to do just the I5 at the top and just give us a little bit of a pattern there. Cool. Now I'm going to switch over to the 81, and he's going to do the same thing. So now I'm going to switch between the I5 and the 81. So there you can hear that now we've got a dynamic and a condenser, completely different textures. And again, the feel between them is so different, you can pick which one is the one that you like. I often do this when we do recording of variety type shows where there's so many different genres in a show. I'll add maybe even a third mic. I sometimes have used 2 of them in conjunction, but just to get a bit more bite in a chorus or something. But most of the time, one of them will work better for acrostic moment, for rim shots, for center shots, for ghost notes. What language is that? Ghost notes. And you can see they're in the same position. I've got them lined up, so we try and get like a phase alignment between them, but we don't really use them together. The bottom snare with the dynamic and the condenser, very similar. Obviously, the condenser on the bottom is going to be very brittle. Dynamic is going to be less brittle, just characteristics of the actual mic. And it goes again with what you want to use. And I showed you last week a technique on the 57 how to get it nice and bright and use the reverb on that. Whereas with the 450, that's even more pronounced because it's so bright and so brittle, potentially, and you can play with that. But again, it goes down to what is it you're trying to achieve. If he plays, if you play R&B, you can start by addressing the kit right, tuning it right, even down to the choice of skins. And then based on how the drummer plays, I often observe the drummer and then mic accordingly. You can talk to my whole team. The last thing you do is bring the mics to the kit. There's no sense in miking up the kit and then wait for the drummer to sit down and do his thing. Got to wait for him because everything he does affects the way that we assign microphones. So I'm going to get him to play for us again. You've got another loop going there. So before he does that, let me just switch back on what I need on this side. I'm going to use the 81 at the top with the 57 on the bottom. I'm going to stick with our basic tom mics, and I'm going to switch to the 81 on the overheads. And then, yeah, that should be it. A little bit of life in the kit with the verb. I'm going to leave the tom reverb off for now. I'm just going to put an overhead reverb. You ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. That was a nice groove. So on that one, we use the overheads, the 81 overheads. Our next exercise I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him just to do, you can even play a little bit of that same groove. I'm just going to mute everything else, including, I'm going to pull down the music so you can hear the music if you want. Play the same groove for me all the way through. What I'm going to do while he's playing is I'm going to switch between the overheads, the two pairs of overheads, both flat, both no filters. You can see them on screen. No EQ, no nothing. The 103s have got a pad in because they're obviously super sensitive. And I've got no filters on the mics as well. I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. It's looking a little bit in the wrong direction. I'm just going to go straight down. That one as well. It's quite tricky getting one stand for two sets of mic in the same place, but I want it to look nicely. So when you're ready, you can go for it. Cool. So I was trying to get my screen to follow the microphone that I had up at the right time. And you could hear there's a texture difference between them, which is massive. The Neumann's got that natural Neumann darker sound, much more complementary to the Toms. Your 81's a lot more pronounced. They exaggerate the stereo image a little bit more, even though they're only an inch wider. Definitely a lot more snare coming prominent through the 81s. Very similar gain structures. Texturally wise, I would definitely go with the 103s. The only reason I put the 81s on overheads, they do work, but I would naturally darken them. So I would work with that high mids a little bit. There's a little bit of a between 3 and 4K edge there which comes through, which bothers me. So the closer cymbals are a bit more pronounced because they are tighter. They're both cardioid, but the 81's definitely tighter. So you almost want to get a little bit higher than what you are currently with the 103s. But just again, you know, if you get the opportunity to do an experiment like this and listening to sets of microphones in context, it does show you quite a bit, and you can see I've got no filters, no EQs, no nothing. If this was on a live stage and I had a bassist going here, I would definitely do a high-pass filter just to clean up. But I would find the sweet spot of where I want to keep it as low as possible. I'm not going to go just high-pass filter to 400 because it's cymbals. It's not cymbals. It's the drum kit. You know, and that's. But there's different ways of doing it. If it's a very noisy festival stage with guitar amps and all that kind of stuff, you know, you get a lot of guys that come really close, even bottom mic, you know, for some TV shows. And I've done that where we come in closer, we add a couple of mics, we mic from underneath. Then it's just cymbal mics. Because you're getting a lot of separation noise and all that, so then we can filter as much as you want, but you use them differently as well. Your traditional overhead is the kit that you want to have a listen to. I hope all of this makes sense. I don't know if there's any questions that have come through. I don't have WhatsApp with me or anything like that. One question. Put it on a piece of paper and on the glass. I've got the gummy bears behind the glass there, so they're controlling this for us. I wanted to have a listen to the kick drum now. So we're going to do, you can play that same loop again just so you've got something to play. Because obviously, the reason I want him to play the whole kit, because if I just get the kick drum, you get a false sense of what the sound, what the kit sounds like. Because obviously the snare is going, the hi-hat's going, and there's toms going. So the mics in the drum kit are not isolated. So I'm going to mute overheads. I'm going to just go to the kick drums. I'm going to start with the kick in. I'm going to switch the EQs off for now, and the filters on all three. So we've got a kick in, which is a BD91, kick out, which is a 902, placed just on the threshold of the hole. We spoke about that the other night. If you take a microphone like this, you can see it. This is the blue line I spoke about on the BD52. If I open this, that is the capsule. So if you put the blue line on the vellum, the capsule is on the inside. And the reason that's important, you all know what turbulence is in wind noise. So that port that's on the drum kit there is actually spitting out a lot of turbulence. So if this mic is outside the drum there, and the capsule is sitting there, it's getting a lot of distorted frequency, you know. So by putting it on the blue line on the vellum, it's outside of that turbulence. Or if you come out, I would move to the side to get out of the path of the turbulence. There was a question last week about, you know, what if you do if there's no hole in the drum kit? You find that a lot on jazz kits and stuff like that. The two vellums just have to be tuned nicely, and you're still going to bring the microphone and find a sweet spot, and it's going to work. There's a question. Do I find it hard to balance? No, if I stand on one leg, maybe I'm going to fall over. The question is, do I find it hard to balance next to the drum kit? That's why I've got my in-ears in. I'm pretty isolated. Obviously, the low end is bugging me. I'm not running them very loud. I'm listening to the left, right, which is what I'm sending you guys. I am recording. And obviously, what I did is I set all the gain structures and stuff before we went on air, different to last week. So yes, I would much quicker and much rather in this situation be away from the kit, but for this exercise with these nice little cheap in-ears that I've got, they work well. So I hope that makes sense on the kick drum. So I'm going to get him to play the kick drum. So the 902 is placed the same way. The capsule is just inside the vellum, inside the port. So what I did there is I went, and you followed me on screen. I was going 91, 902 sub kick. And if you were on cell phone or on a little speaker or something, you probably did not hear the sub kick because it is exactly that. It's very low frequency. A lot of guys, some of the mistakes they make with sub kicks is they still don't treat it because it can clip out your channel quite quickly. This can kill your PA if you don't have subs appropriate to what you're trying to achieve. You don't have to use a sub kick, but a sub kick helps you. I generally use a sub kick. I don't route it to my left and right. It doesn't go there. It's basically tuned, and I've got it on a post feed straight to the subs that are stacked on the ground. And what I'll do is I'll still go and process it. I'll put a high and a low pass filter on it. The high pass filter, I put it about 32 hertz, and the low pass filter I bring right down to about 100, 110. So if you look on screen, you can see just a nice little filter, because there is some other noise. There's no processing in that speaker, but because it's so big, it's not picking up cymbals or anything like that. But you can still process it to protect, and it's all about cleaning. If you think about it, you might not be hearing some of that noise, but it's being processed, and if I start doing some dynamic control to make it a bit more punchy, to do some R&B or club type music, I am going to bring some other noise and kill my drivers if I'm not careful. So I want to definitely control that. And you heard in the scenario that we hear, the inside kick had less top end than the outside kick. So that 902 is a very nice standalone kick drum microphone. Although where it sits, I can definitely get two different textures out of them. So the way I had it earlier is I had a high pass and a low pass on the outside kick, and I had a low pass filter at about 100 on the inside kick. I'm not doing any kind of phase or delay fixing yet. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask you to play the same thing, and I'm going to start with the 91 and then bring in the 902, so we have the two microphones working together. I'm first going to let you hear the two different tones with them now that I've put the filters on. Put that at about 700. When you're ready. Cymbals are loud. I didn't realize I allowed that until I bring the lapel mics in. So what you heard there is I'm using my out kick as a bass, in kick as a top end, bring it up together. And because they're focusing on different frequency ranges, I don't get a lot of overlap on the low end. So I don't really have phasing issues. I did hit the phase button on the 902 and you heard a difference. And a little bit of delay on the inside kick maybe, but obviously, it's difficult in this scenario for me now, but I've got another question. How do you go about placing kick mics? I just explained that, but okay. So the 91 on the inside, it's a boundary mic. It's flat on the inside in a pillow. So I generally put about 16 inches from the vellum, so it's got some space. If you go a lot closer, depending on the vellum and the padding that you got on the inside is not necessarily going to help you. So if you've got a cloth padding or a pillow padding or something like that, if you get too close, you actually got some padding in front of the microphone, not necessarily vellum in the direct path. I am going to do something now quickly, which is going to freak Johan out. I'm going to pick one. One of the six. I'm going to use this one. Marlon, I'm going to just grab your camera for a second.
Go ahead.
So you guys can see. So as soon as I'm ready with it, I'm going to move the 902 and show you what I'm talking about inside there. Don't know if you can see that. So in this case, we've got no padding up against the front vellum, and then we're about 2-3 inches off the vellum with that 91. And what's going to happen is, as I move further back or further forward, obviously the attack of how it works with the so get this back in position. With the vellum is going to change a lot. So
can we try a different genre?
We can try a different genre, different.
Yeah.
Plugging your power back in. There you go. Marlon's back on camera. Let me put the whole kit up for a bit. I'm going to switch to the i5 and the 450 on the bottom snare.
So this would be R&B, specifically what they call trap music. So
okay. Cool. Go for it. Cool. So what I did there immediately, because we've obviously been working a lot on the toms, I just pulled them down 5 dB, all 4 toms, to bring them back into the mix a little bit. I got the kick going. I brought in a little bit of the reverb and stuff back to give it a bit of life. He played the second tom first there in that one section, which was a really nice different sound on the 421. You want to hit that quickly, that 421? Cool. So that's got a nice, that's just got one mic on it. I've got a bit of the tom reverb on it actually. It's got a little of that separation on the pre-delay. Gives it a nice little snap actually, which makes it almost sounds like there's a bottom snare on it. So again, different textures, and it, you know, the one thing I always try and do is almost never put the same mic on first and second snare. Although the drummers tend to tune them differently and they do sound differently, but I always do a completely different miking technique on first and second. Specifically for so there's a natural separation between the mic and the instrument itself, so you can clearly hear when the drummer changes. Almost said musician. When the drummer changes.
That's cool.
So I often get asked, when we did Dr. Toomey a couple of times, once in the Dome and one at the Foot Tracker, we had the 2 different kits. We had Legan and Sabu, and then we had Peter and Sabu on the first one. One on Sono, one on DW on the 2 kits, and Legan was on a Tama and a DW.
Great
and
drummers, by the way.
Both,
Great
all
drummers.
3. I mean, Peter is just amazing, nice and consistent. Legan is just Duracell bunny of note, energy for days. He came straight from rehearsals of a whole day at Idols and jumped onto the stage and played a 4-hour show. You know, it's just crazy. But what I did there is I actually went with the 2 kits. I didn't just do the whole snare. I did completely different miking solutions on the 2 kits. One was AKG and Shure, and the other one was Sennheiser and Audio-Technica around the entire kits. Even on those, Sabu was on the first one and on the second one, and Peter was on the first one, was sort of the lead drummer, so I put the sub kick on him. And then obviously they got talkback mics, so they can talk to each other, they can listen to each other on separate talkback channels on the MEs. They can actually, the whole show long, they can talk to each other without the other guys hearing them, so they can plan what they're doing. But it's just the approach again to how you want to mic the kit. I'm going to quickly talk about some of our mics that I put here. The 350, let's do toms. Maybe, I don't know if you've got a song there that's a lot of tom work.
Yeah.
Specifically between 4 and 5. You guys keep watching on the screen. I'm going to switch between the different mics on 4 and then on 5. Like I mentioned, on 4, I've got a 350, the 230 of Audio-Technica, and an SM57. And then on tom 5, I've got the 230 and an AKG 519 clip-on capsule. You can see those on that back camera quite nicely. So I'm going to switch between those. I'm going to mute everything else, so we're quite isolated. Even mute the overheads and the effects. It's going to work. I'm going to start with the 230s, and then on the, if you follow on screen, you'll see which microphone I've got active at which any given time. I'm also going to switch off all of the gates, just so you can hear them in their raw state. Cool. When you're ready. Yeah, I don't know if you're keeping track with what I was doing there. So the 350 on that fourth tom was the most rounded sound. The 230 a bit darker, the 57 exactly what you expected, and go either way. With a little bit of movement, you can get a great sound, but that 350 automatically. One of the things with the 350, I'm going to take it off here and show it to you, is just a bit of a hint for those who own them or want to buy them. If you're buying it for toms specifically, I've actually got one here, I don't have to take this one off. So now that I've taken it off, it's in a different position. So this here's a 350. It's got the little gooseneck, little clip-on and gooseneck. So if I clip that on something, chances of this moving is guaranteed 100% because of shaking, moving. When they're brand new, the gooseneck works well. This works on brass quite nicely. You can keep it in position. It's very lightweight, works very well. The capsule itself sits inside of the little sponge there. You pull this out. You've got a Velcro strip, which I've got here, to put it onto strings. Very versatile mic. We spoke about it a lot last night. So this is the mic that Adrian and Marius said that they would have as their, save the day microphone. So with this Velcro, you would get it in there, get like, handle it a bit rough, and then just go and pull it up. If you've ever been to an orchestra gig and you hear that, you know that someone's going to the bathroom or they're putting their instrument down. And you would put this behind the bridge on the instrument, on the strings, and you get a really nice close mic on a violin or any kind of microphone like that. So this is very cool. But then what they do have, which a lot of people don't know about for drums, is their drum clamp. Now this thing is amazing. So again, I'm going to pull this out. It's got a pop filter. Pop filter just goes in there. The microphone's in the clamp. Cable clips over here. Almost 3 times a thicker gooseneck, very stiff. And the mounting system here, little spring clip. It's got a tuning lug on it. You put this over your tuning lug, and it clips around the back of the tuning lug or bolt. So the drummer can still get to the tuner, but chances of this thing moving, it's got a couple of axes that are on a hexagon thing over here. So once it's in and you've tightened the screw, this thing's not going anywhere. It's sitting on the drum and it's very stiff. So you can get in position, it's going to work great. So whether it's the Beta 98, the 519, the 350, I'm not saying it doesn't work with this, but you've got to have your techs on stage, just watch your position. A lot of guys on the smaller toms, you often don't have a lot of space, and depending on the mounting system of the tom, so where you clamp this, you go clamp on the side, because if you clamp here, it's too high, you've got a cymbal here, so they go sideways and they bend this up and over, and then what happens is as he's playing, he's just relaxing. Same thing on a 98. So once or twice I've asked the drummer just to keep an eye on one, and just if you see it move, this is the position I want it in. If we know we're not going to be able to get to him, or between songs, your techs are checking them, because obviously once it starts moving, you're basically changing your miking technique, and your source is going to change, your gain structure is going to change, all that kind of stuff. So having a mic that stays in position, these universal clamps that we're using here, which is the Shure universal clamps, are amazing products. They work on percussion, they work on toms. You can mount them in a couple of different ways. They come with big clips, small clips, or thread adapters, depending on what you want to put on them. But they're solid. They don't move. This 450 or any one of these mics, it's going to stay in that position until I take it off, if it's been tightened. So continuity is key. Kick drum mics, I spoke about it on Tuesday, that when a microphone moves, and when people mic up a drum kit, or even in this case, you can see on the hi-hat there, we're using short booms, so there's nothing sticking out. There's no extra bits. We're using telescopics here, so we don't have extra length sticking out. People walking past, kicking stands, moving stuff. You've got to think about that kind of stuff for people. Often on a small stage, whether it be the bassist or guitarist, or someone's got to get in somewhere, has got to squeeze past the mic stands or something, and they're going to bump something. So if you spend a lot of time placing, make sure that you look at the entire structure. You don't have arms of boom sticking out in that way. It's like for this one here is sticking out as far as the kick drum stand. So that's the extremity of our whole drum kit over there. We've got very compact and considered setup, and you've got to think about that, because once you're in a show, you don't want someone running up to the kit the whole time, moving stuff, adjusting stuff. Your microphones, if you're going to spend time placing them and spend time on your sound check and your gain structure, every time they move, things change. So we've got to pay attention to that. And even, for example, I spoke about Mike moving on a boom, and then the drummer grabs it while he's playing, puts it back in position. It's never the same position. It's a bit higher, a bit lower. It's going to change. So it's important that you can get it staying in the same place. So if you do have one of these clip-ons, if you put it in its most natural state, which is straight up like it is now, chances are it's not going to move too much. But the minute you go out of place like a 98 and you do that, I've already got every time I let go, it moves a bit. So it's going to relax and move. So you've got to think about those kind of things.
And also from a playing point of view, if I play softer notes, if I play really hard notes, you're going to get that movement.
Yeah. The other thing that I've seen guys do, and I've got a 57 here, the first thing that happens with an older 57, they show the age a little bit, is their front protective grille over here. And you can hear when I'm moving it, it is loose. It's designed to be loose. They start shaking and they start vibrating. So if you got this on a snare or on a tom, they start vibrating. What people do is they grab a piece of tape and they tape it around the back here. And they think they've done nothing. If you own a 57, have a look at it. Behind the grill here, there's a porous metal grid. There's a port back here. So the whole microphone, like a vocalist cupping a mic, if you put a piece of tape around here, you turn this into a telephone mic. And it sounds horrible. And it accentuates a lot of its pattern out the front. It just doesn't work. So if it is vibrating, one piece of tape somewhere down one of the sides just to hold it from vibrating is fine. But you can't close that port. That's the most common, spoke about it last night, facepalm moments. I walk up and I see on a hi-hat and there's a piece of black nitto around the mic. And you ask them why? Because it was vibrating. But what they don't think about, and the same guy who put the tape there is moaning at the vocalist for cupping the mic. You've got other issues. So let's just leave that there. So and we said that last night as well in the discussion. Mario said it very well. Make sure you know how your instruments, your microphones work, what their specs are, how they work, how they listen, how they respond to different situations, so that when you get faced with a scenario, you know what you're listening to and you know what to expect. Peter said he travels with Tandiswa. He doesn't always have the luxury of choosing. He gets there, has a look, see what it is, checks out placements, runs to the desk and mix. You work with what you get. But again, if he hears something, he knows it's because of either the choice of mics that they've used or something else that's going on. It's not necessarily always a mixing option. I just for some reason got a bunch of mics here which I'm really attached to. This is the 421 that's on the second snare there. These are really very cool mics, large, medium diaphragm. It's got a high pass adjuster on the back. It's got 4 different positions for proximity effect, which works really nice. So you can actually, on your toms, you can control how much is coming into the source on the back and stuff like that. So I don't know if you've got any other questions. I don't even know what the time is. Anybody?
We got 2 more genres, so
Yes, let's have some. I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna fiddle while you play. How's that?
I like where this is going. can I say this? All the songs that you're hearing, these are all songs that I've produced. I'm sitting with tons of material, so musicians out there, artists, especially now, you've got all this time on your hands that you're sitting at home because of the current situation. Get in touch with me. Inbox me on Facebook. Get in touch with me, Marlon Green, MarlonGreen. And let's talk about some collaborations. We do music lessons as well. So, yeah, all the stuff that you're hearing is waiting for you. Let's make some music together.
See what happens when you give a drummer a microphone. Now I'm pulling his leg. I was going to let you say goodbye. Have you got another song for us?
Yeah.
From my side, just thank you for spending some time. Last week when we were done, we shot a couple of videos around Marlon's songs with the cameras. Go check it out on his Facebook or on his website. You can see what we did there. So some really good songs that he's done. So we're probably going to do that again today afterwards. For now, from my side, just thank you again for your time.
Yeah, man.
It's a lot to try and get through in a very short space of time. I know some of you want to have lunch and breakfast and that kind of stuff. So pop us questions. We're going to do this again next Friday. We'll do some other stuff. So every week we'll try and focus on something different. But it does help getting feedback from you guys so we know where we're at and what we need to focus on or spend time on. And check us out on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. If you missed last night's episode, it was really good. Peter Paulson, Marius, Marie, and Adrian van der Walt chatting with me about microphones. We spoke for about 2 hours. It was really cool. Congratulations to Paul Smith, who won the competition, the MV51 microphone. If you don't collect by 1 o'clock today, it's mine. And then see him pop around the corner. Other than that, I think thank you. Thanks to all the guys for helping. We're going to play you out with a song.
Yeah.
You want to say goodbye?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you to, again, Sound GP. You got to check out everything and anything that they're doing, guys. It's an incredible space for you to learn in the comfort of your home or wherever you're at. So much love to Christo. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll be here each week with the team. We're calling it the family. I'll just be the short guy with the bald head. And again, get in touch with me. Let me know what you're thinking, your thoughts. And again, it's all about collaboration. So a message to drummers. I know we spoke to all the engineers today. Drummers, have some respect for your sound engineer because it's teamwork. He's the one that makes you sound good. So whenever you're on stage, to all the drummers out there, have respect for your sound crew. Mr. Green, info@righteousrecord.com. That's the email address, and then you can get me on Facebook. Would love to hear from you. Chris,
Cool.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, man. Let's go out with a song.